Welcome everyone. Thanks for spending your time here with us. As most of you know, I'm Aleksa from Aetherius, mobile development company where we focus on building mobile apps for our clients. And today guest is Chana, my dear friend and an engineering manager with a lot of hands-on experience working with AI and with a lot of practical examples on how he was able to integrate AI into his iOS and Android teams. So Chana, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for joining us here. He will be driving this session, so the session should be 45 minutes long. If at any point you have some questions for us, we will be discussing a lot of things, so please feel free to leave the questions in the comment section and we will go over them, so we have 15 minutes ideally for the Q&A. So yeah, welcome again everyone. Chana, feel free to introduce yourself and we can kick this started.
Thank you, Aleksa. Hello, everyone. I'm Caner, and I'm really appreciate to be here, and I would like to share some experiences from my professional work. But before, and I will be here for 45 minutes, as Aleksa mentioned. It might be longer. I'll try to keep it short as much as I can. It will be, there are so many aspects of using AI tools in our development environment, especially on mobile, because compared to other platforms such as backend and frontend, it's actually a bit more obscure to use it on mobile, but we will come to that. First things first, I've been in mobile domain since 2011 as an engineer, as a manager, in various roles, as a founder as well. Failed multiple times. Hopefully I will fail more in the future, but we'll see. And currently I'm based in Dubai, but in a month's time, I'll relocating back to London. If you are happening to be around in the incoming conferences in Leeds in October, I think, I would love to can grab some coffee. So, further ado, what are we going to talk about today? There are two things. First things first, we have the path, like you have a code base, small, big, multi-modularized, but there's always a problem. You can open cursor or open Claude Code and ask something. It runs a bunch of commands, bunch of shell scripts that it hallucinates or creates and returns you something. But after a while, in the same day, you might get a response that you exceeded your token allowance, or daily or weekly, you might be stranded. You need to switch tools, and same thing repeats again. I will use Claude as an example in here, but you can apply the same principles to OpenAI, Codex, Gemini CLI. I haven't tried, but it should work on that as well. So I will talk about the problem about this, talk about the main principle that Claude.md as a router, not a content store or not a kitchen sink. There are 4 levers I'm going to go deep dive briefly, because each section deserves its own presentation and long form content. And then I'll show some experiments, what I did to visualize it at least. And then you can get some things to apply on your work on tomorrow or on Monday. So what I further do, next one is the same model, same task, same code base, but based on how you configure it, your AI agents, or sorry, not AI, just AI tools, it can make a huge difference. For example, if you have nothing, just as I described the basic vanilla version, you can easily burn your content window pretty easily, because content window is always a clean one for each session. Usually it has 200,000 tokens, and it is very easy to fill with it, with memory, with unused stuff such as MCP connections, Figma especially, be careful about that one. Reading large unnecessary files, bash outputs, especially the outputs can be huge. If you run the Xcode build, for example, on the iOS side, it can generate lots of logs, and each line of log will eat your context window from your context window, which also means you're gonna fill your 5-hour window pretty fast. But with all the levers I mentioned briefly on the previous slide, you can easily drop it at the 20%. But there is a small catch, which I'm going to talk about it during my presentation. So what's the root file? If you search for what that is, it can be either cursor.md, Claude.md, agents.md, something MD. But it's always, everyone almost talking about the same thing, that you can pour the information about your code base, your work, some context about what you're doing into one place. But this one, the tools use the root file and load it into the context window every single time in every single query you are about to run. If it is too big, then it's become a problem over time. At the beginning, it's very small, like 150 lines, 100 lines, 200 lines. Still, it is some context window. It's not a big deal. But if the code base is big, and usually it is usually old, 5-year, 10-year-old code bases, even 15-year-old code bases. It's pretty possible, and it becomes a bit of a problem. Why is a problem? Well, if it is 50K of your tokens, still it's not a big deal, right? Like we have still 150,000 tokens, but there are some good videos from Andrei Karpathy and from other YouTube channels that the context window is not every single section of the context window are equals. The first part is usually the smart one. The second part is usually the dumb one. And this is where the model starts hallucinating, saying you are absolutely right, I'm wrong, or becomes confusing, or it confuses itself pretty easily. So that's why it's very important not to fill the initial half of the context window with unnecessarily big or irrelevant context. So for this example, I'm going to use Sonnet as a baseline because it is cheap and it is quite capable compared to Haiku. Same thing applies for the Google Flash and Codex as well. For daily tasks like writing the code, executing plans, executing anything, Sonnet level models are perfect because they are designed for those kind of things. For thinking and planning, Opus level models are better, but we can discuss later on because that's a bit of a sidetrack. Second, I'm going to talk about exploration is a tax. Why it's a tax? Because when you search for something in the code base, like ask what this module does or what this functionality does, it looks around a lot, reads every single source file, which means if the source files are big, which usually they are again, 200, 500, and if there are many, your context window will be overloaded quite quickly. And when that happens, you're going to have a very subpar answer and it will be costly. Last but not least, a fat root files always backfires, as I mentioned, because it's the simplest form of context layer for the code base. But when things become much more complicated, it cannot stay as it is. It needs to become a router to redirect the agents to the right places, right tools. So just like everybody else is saying, plan mode is the floor. Yes, don't ask anything about to your agent to do something immediately. Just ask for it, like plan for me. Like you don't need to switch to plan mode every single time, but you can ask it, plan it first, discuss it with me, ask clarifying questions, be concise, and then it plans something. You can talk to it to refine it, and then you can start executing it. For planning purposes, you can use Opus if it is absolutely necessary, especially for breaking changes or requires deep thinking or code base level changes. Opus is actually far better, but for very focused areas, for very focused implementations or changes, Sonnet is more than enough. One side note on this, if you use agents for specific tasks, not all the repetitive tasks, but for specific functionality. For example, I use agents for twist migration from Xcode projects to Gradle-like project manifest files. It requires its own dedicated agent to do this replicated work every single time. So general purpose agents can do it maybe as well, but it won't be efficient. For those agents, you cannot tell the agent that you're going to plan this first, discuss with me, and then you're going to do this, do that, do that. Here is a good example. And then you will verify your changes by running some commands, compiling the project, running the tests, so that you can create a close feedback loop. And that saves tremendous amount of time. So you don't need to deal with it with the consequences later on. Because again, these are just tools. They are not magic pills. So how do we do that? I said the Claude.md file can be quite big, yes, over time, but keep it simple every single time, as much as you can. Start very, very small. You don't need to implement all those things at once, because things about things I'm gonna share now, they are learnings from really big code bases, not meta level, not family level, but big and old code bases, which include lots of modules, 100 plus, sometimes 200 plus modules. By the way, when I say modules, means they can contain multiple targets inside as well. So easily 300, 400 targets in one project. But based on your circumstances, based on your needs, start small, because one single root Claude.md file has its own users. But when things get complicated, as I mentioned, it needs to become a router. This is the point when we introduce Claude.md files into each module. So each module file can contain their own context, and the agent can use them when it is absolutely necessary. Also, you can use those Claude.md files to replace the exploratory work, because you can put those things in one place. Third item is the skills. What is a skill or commands in this case? These things are the repetitive tasks or repetitive work, like compiling the project, compiling tests, I don't know, code reviews, or doing specific things, repetitive things that agent does. And when you create the skill for that, it frees up the context window, because it creates a very sub session for it, and it won't eat your context or tokens, which is very important. It stops the token usage completely. And then over time, this is actually a nice to have. You can create a memory.md file. You don't need to maintain this by yourselves. Just instruct your AI environment to keep it up to date. But that way, you can it can keep track, like the good practices, bad ones, incidents, hotfixes, or something like that. So as an example for the first iteration, when you have nothing, this is your baseline. Like I'm gonna give examples from my iOS code base, but these things can easily be converted into an Android code base as well. So when you have a normal code base with Xcode project files and all those things, and as something like a pull to refresh to an e-commerce catalog, Claude goes and reads all those files, like the project file itself. If there is any project that's with file from Twist, it reads that one as well, which is better because it is smaller. Reads the relevant source codes and speculates, and then creates something. Reads something about the Swift UI, and then reads the test as well. Reads everything, and then returns your result. Depending on your system, it can easily eat almost 30% of your tokens, or half of the tokens available for that session. For me, it was like 58K for this example, but in a separate session with no twist, nothing, it was around 100K. Then I introduced the Claude.md file into it. Okay, what does it contains? It contains some context about the code base, how the folders are structured, where to look for, how to run the build commands, how to run the test, conventions, and then not the token usage itself, because this example was a small one, but the speed was completely different, almost 50%. Not 50%, roughly 30% faster. The first one took roughly, implementing that task took roughly 10 to 12 minutes, but this one took roughly 7 to 8 minutes. On one cost, it stayed the same, relatively the same, very similar, insignificant, but on time-wise, it was way faster because it was guided. In small code bases, it is more than enough, but in big code bases, it starts to save some tokens. Not too much, but still 20%, 30% drop you might see depending on the size. And yes, this one works. It is small, but it can get big, really big. When it comes big, we have another option to mitigate the problem, which is the module Claude.md file. So what does it mean? Let's say you have separate modules such as networking, design system, I don't know, the feature itself, let's say called feature catalog at the moment, or core modules, which is unfortunately named because it can be many things and can become a big bloated dumping ground, something similar at least. You can easily introduce localized module or Claude.md file. It can be you can also rename it to something else. It doesn't matter. You can use like module.md file. Maybe it might be better for the long term. Still, the content during the session, the root context file, root Claude file will be loaded, but these will be only loaded when it is needed. If you are working on networking layer, for example, the system will load only the relevant part. So you can work that area in isolation without using your precious context window. Snapshot test, for example. When I introduce this and run the same task to implement the pull to refresh, I started a slight, again, drop on the context usage, token usage, but the time that it executed was roughly 50% compared to the original, roughly 5 or 6 minutes on the same machine, same environment, same code base, just a different branch. And again, these files can be long, but if you keep it under, I don't know, 150, it should be all right, because when the Claude Code uses this one, again, it will be put on your context window. And it can go on and goes on and on and on. And then you realize Claude does some things repetitively, like all the time and all the time. Then you can convert those things into skills. For example, it can run Xcode build test something to execute individual tests or the whole test suite. It can easily, the output will be quite big, as I mentioned. It can easily eat 5,000 tokens, 10,000 tokens, even more, all the paths and everything. And it parses them to find where it failed, if it fails. And that's a big one. And that's actually a real number from this, from the example I created, which we will share it with on a GitHub after the session. But you can convert into a skill, and then skill returns only when it failed and only the relevant context. And literally it's free. One caveat though, the number of skills can increase over time, and you need to maintain those things. You can easily get skills from, I don't know, from Google or known people from the community, and you can easily bloat things up, bloat that section of the code base up, and they will stay there forever. They will become stale over time, probably every single year. In September, you need to revisit them, especially for iOS or for Android, whenever you get a major update, and that becomes a pain, huge pain, because you need to go every single one by one, test them if they are working or not. And they can increase the complexity, especially on the cognitive load side of things. And over time, if the people changed on your team, it becomes really, really hard to maintain the consistency of those skills. So introduce them whenever it is needed only. You can borrow those skills from GitHub, yes, but add them only it is absolutely needed. And at the end, you can introduce memory.md file. So this is like a hot cache, like a Redis cache in a way. It's like a short-term memory for your code base. You can either put it on your Claude memory.md location on your home directory so that you can get the benefit of those learnings, or I don't know, if you're working on multiple projects, you can share that memory with every single one of them. Again, the caveat is this will also be loaded onto your context window on every single session. But if it's same for the repository level, but it will be only for the repository. And it can be also reviewed by other people, because you can also commit these changes. Somebody else checks it and reviews them, prune them time to time, because if you keep the memory up to date, update the memory every single time, after 6 months later, it might again become significantly larger than expected. So pruning is also very important. This is also unfortunately a manual task. You can ask Claude or Codex to prune it, like a timestamp. You can put a timestamp over it. You can format it as however you like. It's useful. It reduces the hallucinations. It reduces the confusions that they can experience. But it compounds. So you won't see the benefit overnight. You will see the benefit probably 3 months from now on, or 2 months from now on, or after 20 PRs later. There are ways to keep these things up to date. Again, you can use Claude.md root file, how to instruct the agent how to keep these things up to date. You can create skills for that as well, so that you can do it for free. It can do it for you as well. As an example of it, it can look like this. This is just a template that I prepared. It can contain all the environment, do this, don't do that situations. You can define some workflows into it, and you don't need to redeclare them every single time. You can also put those things in the context file as well. But with this way, you can, if it's put on the home directory, it can be shared across all projects. So in the end, when you apply those things in a small code base, you can see 20% reduction on the same task on your token usage. It's not that much. Yes, 20% is still big. You can do it more things with it, but it shines especially when you have a big code base. But before we move on to that, for this example, I got rid of the Xcode project files, replaced it with Twist. If you don't use it, please check it out. It is one of the best decisions I've ever made in the last 5 years to start using it in my previous job and in my current one as well, and probably in the next one as well, because it eliminates all the configurational problems. It eliminates all the unnecessary reading of those XML files. When all the context is distributed across all the modules, the agent was efficiently implemented those tasks. The same one, or introduce a new card feature, for example, it took less than 5 minutes to introduce it. It was fast because it didn't navigate or didn't try to figure out too many things at once. It didn't spend too much time on the exploration phase. And usually this is the biggest one. The 80% of your time or agent's time goes into the exploration. Execution is fine for those things. They're pretty good on that. But when you have the context layer in a way, in a very crude definition of it, it's a context layer spread across the code base in a very structured and methodical way. You can reduce the execution time, increase your bandwidth on that sense, reduce your cognitive load, reduce your token usage, and your output quality would increase substantially. But this is a very small task, very small confined example that I created for this presentation. But how does it look like in the real world, like more or less at least? I would like to share what I'm working on at the moment, but this is a fintech. I can't share the code or how it looks like, but it looks something similar to that. So the x-axis actually is not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is actually 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60. So this code base is actually smaller than I'm used to work with. But the comparison between the only root file versus module level files, the token savings were immense, like almost ridiculous. Yes, 8% roughly token saving is actually real. And I used to fill my context window all the time. And now I don't even reach the limit on a Claude Pro subscription, a team subscription, not even a max. And because of that, I break the CI all the time because it fills all the queues. People start to complain about that one. And it is that effective. So you get those benefits more and more when the code base scales. So if it's already scaled, you can introduce those things one module at a time to reap the benefits. So this one is a simulated environment, but it's very close to what I have on my current daily job. And when it's distributed, I mean, the complexity or the time complexity of the token usage reduces immensely. For more metrics, I can show it this one because this is important. There's always a threshold when you get the benefit. Because I mentioned that the root.md file is loaded every single time. If you have those context files across the modules, they will be loaded depending on your work as well. They will eat the context window and more. But the break even is based on my calculation and based on my experience is around 12 modules. When you pass that, you can start introducing the module level files. Claude.md files, module.md files, doesn't matter the name. And based on that, when you have more and more, as you can see the difference, if you have everything in one place, it takes roughly 10,000 tokens for each session gone for your session. But if the root module, Claude.md file acts like a router to direct the agents to look where to look for, the context window stays relatively consistent. Same thing also, I can say the same thing for exploration as well, because you can ask what this module does. It goes to that folder according to the Claude.md file, reads that file and gets back to you instead of reading all those files, all those whatever inside of that module. So it cuts the exploration phase. And you can even you can draw the boundaries even harder that do not give me any comprehensive results, just give me what it does and wait for my instruction. So on that sense, yes, the models are getting better and better. Hopefully the things I'm sharing at the moment, they might become obsolete. Probably they will become obsolete in 6 to 12 months. Maybe not because the way the LLMs work, they won't change that one. So probably this one will stay for a while. So the critical thing is the size of the code base, how it's structured. If it is a big spaghetti code, again, you might not see the benefits, but I want to highlight this one, regardless of the platform, regardless of the language, Swift, Kotlin, React Native, even Flutter. If you draw boundaries between modules, their public interfaces and implementations, how they are composed at app level, you can easily reap benefits of these methodologies because you literally eliminating the complexity on the exploration phase. I mean, those things were designed. I mean, those ideas of code-based level definitions, code-based designs, approaches were designed to address the compilation time in the last decade. But now they eliminate all the complexities on exploration. Also easy to implement for AI and also not easy to break things as well. So if you don't have anything, start with that one and then start using these methods. I think I already mentioned that, but the cost you can save and of course you can't. if it is there's always a cost because these things are introduced new documents like MD files, like Claude.md, Module.md. Also, you might have code base related style guidelines, architectural guidelines, best practices in separate files. You can also mention them in the root folder as well when it's needed, but you pay the price up front. And if you want to pay the price, you need to justify that cost as well. So do not take those things and apply all of them at the same time. Just start small always. Keep it simple until it doesn't meet your needs. That way, at least you can increase the complexity as it needed, and then you can maintain them over time. Otherwise, you need to handle multiple push or pull multiple levers and figure out which one works or not. But gradually, you can adopt those things and create more value in your professional life. Okay, how much time do we have? Still 10 more minutes, but I think we are getting to close. So, same thing, another example. This is from the actual work. So without the module.md file, when I ask how this module work, let's say a cart module, what it does, it handles cart operations, like how to issue a card, how to add your card into Apple Wallet and an Apple Watch, and these kind of things. It's a moderate size module. When I asked it, it took roughly 3 minutes, used many things, and spent half of the context window. This was pretty standard. But with the module.md file, it read that one and it read that one and just quickly, literally in a couple of seconds, it returned the result and used definitely less tokens, like more than 50%, almost 60% difference. And it's just one example in one module. It doesn't matter the size of the code base, it doesn't matter all those things. But you can easily scale this into something else. I mean, if you ask more complex areas of the code base, you can make queries about those things. It can easily read those files, compose an answer for you, and give you the context, and you can move forward. So this is the impact. So with that way, we cut the exploration phase to its like bare minimum. So instead of reading a database, we are reading from Redis cache, almost instantaneous. So again, as I mentioned, start small, let Claude show you the rest. You can use Claude to generate your Claude.md files to keep it very, very small. As I said, somewhere between 100 to 200 lines of code, and no more than that. At 4 or 5 conventions, the things you are using every single day, one step at a time. And then skills, build them one step at a time. Only build them when when you feel the need to introduce them. I mean, the obvious ones are always the building the project, running the tests, running test suites, or maybe archive the project, generate an APK files as well. But introduce them one by one. And then 3 lines, 4 lines, 5 lines, no more than that, to update your memory.md. I prefer to put them on a home folder for personal projects, but for professional work, I prefer to keep them on the code base itself and prune them every 3 to 6 months. Just compact them, not deleting them, compact the content, and then add more things on top of that. And you can use Claude for this. And last but not least, module level Claude.md files. When the root one is getting bigger and bigger, when it's past the 200 lines, 250 lines, and if you have the structure already, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can start introducing them. With that way, you can reduce the load on the exploration phase. So yeah, I think I covered this one as well, and I think that's it. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Caner, for the presentation first. Before we dive into questions, I want to give a short summary of what we covered. So basically, when you're kicking off your mobile projects in terms of AI adoption, it's usually a good pathway to go to start with a root Claude.md file, put all of the things there. As the root folder, root Claude.md file gets bloated, try to introduce Claude.md files per each module. Then the third step would be to add some kind of a memory, which is similar to Chandra said, like a Redis cache, where instead of burning tokens before kind of going to Claude, it will check the previous answers or previous sessions outputs in that memory, and then give you some results. So yeah, step by step, and as I would like to say, a lot of small wins contribute to one big win. At least that's how it is with agentic coding in terms of token optimization and context management for now. So thank you again, and let's start with the Q&A. So we have two questions for now. I also have one question which I want to cover with you. So Leon asked, it also makes sense to specify skills per module, right? For example, for DB layer, you add Swift data skill, but it's not needed in the UI part.
That is true, but you can put, it doesn't have to be in the modules because modules can change over time. You can still keep those skills under the skills folder in the root.claude file folder in your code base. In a healthy code base, you can have maybe 10, 20 skills, but you don't need to spread them out across the modules because skills we don't invoke them, agents invoke them, and if they're in one place, it is easier for them to find them.
So you're talking 10 to 20 skills in a code base of how many modules?
At the moment, I'll give you a concrete example on this. I have a code base it has roughly 135 modules in it. It is relatively moderate at the moment. It has, I think it is 16 or 17 skills at the moment. One for the GraphQL, how to handle those things, mappings, one for usual stuff such as building the module, building the code base, running test suites or test plans, Git operations, time to time, and some one for the UI, especially for UI implementation, because it uses the Figma MCP most of the time. There are some caveats on that though. Sometimes it doesn't work as I expected. One for logs to make sure that I don't post anything sensitive to Datadog or Firebase. And what else? One for async await, how to use it for Swift 6.2 to ensure the structured concurrency. One for snapshot tests. With vanilla setup, it is horrendous, by the way. You need to be very explicit about how to write those things, how to handle snapshot tests on the code base. What else? One for normal unit tests, converting from AC test to Swift testing. What else? One
Yeah,
for local,
so
one for Swift data, for example. Sorry, not Swift data. One for core data. How to handle that as well.
okay, so kind of like a small quote mark sub agents which are specialized in
Yeah.
one particular area. And Philip asked, what skills do you recommend that are useful? So in addition to these, what you shared, I believe they would depend on the project setup. So I
Yeah.
would assume your UI skill and Figma MCP is pretty concrete towards what you're expecting
Yeah.
from it, or am I mistaken?
Yeah. But the value of them, the localized context layer with Claude.md and module level MDs, they provide more value in most cases because when the models are getting better and better, most of the skills become obsolete because models figure it out pretty easily and they use less token over time. I don't know how they are doing it, but this is something I observed in the last 1.5 years of using AI as a companion on the execution on the coding sessions. That is important. Also, you can one more thing as well. If you want to execute those things, you can use commands instead of skills. They have exactly the same behavior. One is for you, one is for the agent. This is also another option. More importantly, I would suggest everyone to learn the basic fundamentals of how LLMs work, how those models work in the first place. You don't need to go into too deep on those. There are deep dive videos on YouTube, but when you have the first principles of how those things work, it will you'll get disproportionate amount of returns from that because the God knows what will happen in the next 6 months. I have no idea. I mean, everything changed in a
Yeah.
year, to be honest. Since Claude Code became public, the whole industry was disrupted.
Yeah. Do you have some concrete YouTube video which you would recommend, or nothing that specific?
Nothing in my mind at the moment, but I think there is a channel called AI Engineering.
Mm-hmm.
They 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 share conference talks about those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Andrew Carpathy's content is always gold. You can follow those things up as well. What else? I mean, but there are so many videos. I mean, one suggestion is to create a Gemini gem to watch them, summarize them, and then you can ask the AI that if it is worthy to watch or not. Probably it will be. That's what I'm doing these days, and it's a bit lazy, yes, but when there are hundreds of videos, like I don't know, thousands of hours worth video, it's a way to do it. And also talking to Claude helps a lot about learning how it works, the best bits, worst bits. I mean, it can be a really good guide, especially the Opus model. Sonnet can be a bit of a, people pleaser. Even now, it is a people pleaser in a way.
You're absolutely right, as the call would say. Yeah, going to the next thing. So Satyarana is saying it may be helpful to have a live coding setting up AI for the first time to existing project which didn't have AI integration yet. So yeah, definitely that would be super fun, and that's something which Chandler actually did in order to prepare these presentations. So
Mm-hmm.
we have a GitHub link which we can share with you. Although it would be a little bit difficult to do that on live because it would take some time to run all
Yeah,
of these prompts and just wait for them. But maybe we can do some recording and share it as a separate video. Definitely, I think that
yeah,
would
that
be
sounds.
super useful.
I can do that. I mean, but I can also share now like how I'm doing if I'm doing the first time. Probably, I will definitely open the Claude Opus model on a Claude Code session and VS Code and ask it like, I want to, I want you to introduce root Claude.md file based on the current conventions and the current structure of the code base, and then give some inputs like maybe I'm using MVVM or I don't know, TCA or something like that, or the old school Viper or clean architecture, something like that, and give some conventions to it and put it on the plan mode. Let's plan with it and then and discuss it and make it much more refined in a couple of discussions back and forth. And then and at the end, ask Claude to review it if it is good enough. There are some, I don't know, weak spots. It will definitely find some weak spots, even it is the main author of it, and then refine them a little bit more to refine it, like because it will make some suggestions. You can easily follow those suggestions. If you don't like them, you can also put your own input as well. Maybe it's a very sensitive code base. Maybe it uses a mission critical components, or it needs to be really, really secure. And in terms of data privacy, you can do a brain dump to it. It will format it for you, and then create a file and create a Claude.md file for you. And the end result, if the end result is big, you can move some context into a normal documentation and reference to it in the Claude.md file, and then you can start using it.
Yeah, so that would be the start point.
Yeah,
Thanks for sharing, Jenna. Thanks for sharing the way of thinking. And yeah, Leon, definitely you can ask. Go ahead.
yeah,
One AI modularization question.
Yeah. So it will be very simple. Imagine typical iOS application which has a set of features and it also utilizes networking and database, so we can be short as possible. Now, usually you always write a bunch of helpers for the networking and a bunch of helpers for working with the database, and then you start working with features.
Yeah.
Now, what is the best, based on your experience, modularization of the app so you can fully utilize it, like a common module, the helpers module, networking layer module, and then per feature, which is implemented completely inside one module, or you also split feature into, for example, UI part like view model and view, and the logic part, which has then just specific files for the module. I hope I was clear enough.
Yes. There are two answers, two sections actually for the answer of your questions. There is one side is the how to structure the data flow. It can be MVVM, it can be MVI, it can be something else. The second part is actually the code base level structure. For example, if you have features, they can contain their own stuff in one place, and then at the bottom layer, you can separate the networking, data persistence, logging, analytics in separate folders or separate structures. If you put everything into a helper module or common UI module, they bloat up over time. If the code base is smaller, you can do that. But for in a scalable way is that I saw work every single time is to separate them based on their responsibilities, like small responsible areas that I mentioned. Networking is one, data persistency is another one, analytics is another one, logging is another one. Some other utilities, string operations, data operations is another one, and put features on top of that. So they can use those frameworks as a reference, and then you can build the features separately and then bind everything at the app level. How to bind them? You can use dependency injection libraries such as Swinjet, or better one is the factory. I don't remember the guy's name, Michael something. Maybe you met, I think, Alexa, I think.
Michael Long, yeah.
Michael Long, and you can use his library to that. But the concept is called contract-based code-based modularization. There are really great videos about those things, especially from DroidCon. You can watch Josef Raska's video, I think from a couple of years back. That is a good one. It uses the same principles on an Android code base, but the principles are the same. For iOS, I use Factory for dependency injection, and I use interface implementation separation for each module so that every feature depends on those interface targets, not the implementation themselves. So with that, and inject them at the root level, which is the app level. So with that way, whatever happens on the implementation layer, implementation side of things, the contract, aka the protocol interface, doesn't change, and it improves the code base, improves the build time, and eliminates the potential side effects as well when you make some changes.
Thanks for the really detailed answer. I just wanted to also add, but you already added, that this interface modules and complete module separation impacts build times a lot, at least as per my experience working on those kind of large scale apps as well. Leon, hopefully we answered your question. And Philip is asking, what if we start adding MD files in already huge projects? So I believe with this, the question is kind of like, we have a big project, maybe it's not modularized. What should we do? Does it make sense to have then this root Claude.md file, which would potentially be big? So what is your opinion on that?
Okay, it depends on the project, of course, but probably the first things first is to I would definitely get the dependency graph before I do anything. The reason is, when things are huge, old, maybe there are multiple languages inside the code base, it might not be so obvious what to do. And in most of our careers, we never start using the greenfield projects. So the first approach is to gather information, like which areas are the hotspots, which areas which areas are changed so frequently that affects other areas. And one good rule of thumb is to start with the small ones, the least frequently changed areas first, especially if they're utilities, for example, string operations, for example. Extract them, define boundaries, like I mentioned, like create an interface around it, and start using it, start refactor the relevant areas first. For the Claude stuff, for Claude.md files, I would definitely say none of those things are viable at the moment, whereas there's someone in the organization is very strict. Again, use the same approach, get where the hotspots are, and this time capture the context of those areas first and put them on the Claude.md file. If the things don't change that much, you don't need to put it. Just put the most important bits, maybe some business logic as well, like how those areas work, and then plan the changes step by step. If it is modularized but not very well modularized, again, use the dependency graph. With that way, you can identify which modules have the least connections, inbound and outbound dependencies, and these are the safest areas to make some changes. And then we can introduce those things module by module, because that will result in smaller PRs, easy to process, easy to review, and then you can also easy to distribute between teammates, or easy to distribute between AI agents, or convert them into an AI agent to perform the change. Before AI, it for me in my previous company, it took roughly 6 months to modularize the whole code base from ground up, which was already 12 years old. And with AI now in my current company, it took roughly 2.5 weeks with more than 135 modules, because it's a very repetitive process. But in order to get the compounding effect, you need to identify, as a first principle, identify the least important, least impactful areas first, cover them, and then move to the more complex ones. It's a way of divide and conquer approach.
Yeah, so Philip, I believe Caner answered your question. So it would be the taking the least impactful code and pieces of code, and then starting to modularize from that way. So from bottom to up.
Yeah, on that sense, I think the most important one is the clear separation of concerns. The interfaces are the most important bit. The second one is the dependency injection. The method you use is actually quite important. If it used the runtime injection, it might bring some surprises, unfortunate surprises, because you won't be able to catch them on compile time, and random crashes when you release the app. It is the worst one. But if you use the container-based dependency injections from Michael Long, it is far more reliable. I mean, I'm strictly talking about iOS. Android is actually in a better state with Hilt. I mean, you don't have that problem. But you have the tool out of the box in a way. But same structure applies as well. The guardrails, like what to put on the public interface, what not to put it as well. But start small always. Start as very small POC, very unused areas of the code base. It can be a settings page, it can be a profile page. Okay, profile might not be the best one, but usually the settings areas about push notifications, privacy controls, that part doesn't change that. You can use it as a POC, proof of concept, and then build the case and share the results, create some RFC, how to adopt it, apply the first principles, how to the code base as well. Use the dependency graph to identify create a priority list. Like, we're going to start from this one, and then we will follow this list. It can be short, it can be very long as well, and get the buy-in. Because the biggest business value from this is it enables, it reduces the developer velocity. You can ship things faster, which means you can experiment faster for the business. Your compile time will improve. Let's say not improve, but it will stay consistent when the code base grows as well. Another bonus, things won't break unexpectedly. That's also a big bonus for the incident wise, because the company will not lose money unexpectedly, at least. It will minimize the risk at least. And it's an architectural challenge, regardless of the platform. And it's a good practice. But only do it if it is absolutely necessary. If you need to get those metrics as well.
Thank you very much, Caner, for the detailed answer. Since we are out of time, I have one question kind of to summarize things up before we wrap it for today. I want to take any much of your time. So within this setup, so imagine you have a real big code base with 150 modules. You have Claude.md files, you have Module.md files, you have memory, you have everything set up.
Yeah.
Figma MCP as well. So how realistic, at least per your experience, is the scenario where you just point your Claude to a Jira ticket, point it to the Figma file, Jira ticket has some acceptance criteria. How realistic is based on that simple prompt, like this is my ticket, this is the Figma file, go from start to end, and then push that to the code review itself. So is that something that is happening in your organization? Is it something that you're trying to achieve? Because as I'm talking to people in this space, like that is the kind of the ultimate goal. So having a self-driving vehicle, let's say.
Yeah. So it doesn't happen in my organization. It never happened anywhere I have worked with. Reason is there is a human element. Okay. 3 elements actually. One is the designer, one is the engineer, one is the probably product. The problem is the language we speak. So between engineer and designer, the language is actually the design system, and it works only if both parties speak the same language, use the same things, same token naming, same conventions, and etc. If that is in place, I mean, it doesn't have to be such as colors, typography, spacings, component names, all the basic blocks are in place, then Claude, with the Figma MCP, it can work roughly 80 to 90%. For Jira side or linear, Jira, Asana, any same. If the ticket is not populated correctly, then the outcome will be quite subpar, quite inferior than you would expect. Reason is, most people, usually the tickets contain some acceptance criteria, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes product manager, product owner feels that from product perspective, but most of the time, engineers or EMs are the ones who are responsible of those tickets, because this is an engineering board, not a product roadmap board. So you need to be very, very clear on that. Don't go to the spec-driven side of things because it's a glorified waterfall. But you need to be very concise, like what is expected, what is the problem, what is the expected criteria from the solution. Then again, you can direct it to Claude, and then it can plan something, and then you can work on the plan. But all those MCPs have a cost. They just check.
Burn a lot of tokens.
They burn a lot of tokens and check how much token they're using. And for example, for Figma, I always give the link first of that screen, and then not the whole canvas file, but just that specific screen, and that reduces the token usage a bit. But this is still manageable. Same thing for the Jira linear route as well. You can also save the project ID or board ID into your Claude.md file so that it can go over there. It doesn't need to talk to MCP, try to discover where that is every single time, and then get back to it. There are ways, but this is more like a project management hygiene, and it's very easy, unfortunately, to screw it up. Because if someone always has an most urgent requests that they don't even have time to fill it up. So
yeah, and then when it comes to engineering, the engineers don't have time to fill it up and then start working on it. They usually just start working on it, and
yeah, I mean, it's a ways of working actually. Yeah? So you can define those boundaries. This is like a social contract between ourselves and the EM or the PM. I mean, normally it should be EM's responsibility, but
yeah, it's more
a
of an
long topic.
organizational thing. Yeah, that's a different topic. Yeah, more of an organizational thing, because I know that a lot of companies are trying it. Nobody was quite successful, but yeah, everybody needs to speak the same language as you said, and that's really really nicely put. So that's the main issue, but hopefully we'll get there at some point. Cool. Thank you, Caner. Thank you everyone for spending this afternoon with us. There will be a YouTube video of this. We will also share a GitHub link with the repository, which we used for the benchmarking and for gathering this data. And yeah, I really hope it was useful, and I'll see you on one of our next live sessions. We'll try to have them at least once in a few months. And yeah, thank you for being there. Thank you, Caner, very much. And
Thank
see you
you.
everyone.
Thanks.
Have a
See
lovely
you.
day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye bye.